All right, welcome everybody to this 9x Live workshop on the Enterprise AI Transformation Playbook. I'm very, very excited about this session. Before I introduce our very, very special guest, just want to give a quick introduction into who we are at 9x. So at 9x, you can find us at go9x.com. We're building your one-stop shop to learn AI and automation. Really targeted towards how business professionals can get the most out of this technology. We really believe that AI and automation are the most important skills that you can learn today as a business professional. And it's our mission to bring you these skills on a silver platter. And we do this in a few different ways. First of all, through our YouTube channel. So every week we're publishing AI and automation tutorials, the latest news, demos. It's completely free, as always, with YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to drop a quick our YouTube channel link here in the chat for whoever wants to go and check out our YouTube channel. On top of our YouTube channel, we're also running these live workshops each and every week, exactly like the one you're all in right now. And next week, we're going to get back to building AI agents. This week is a bit more on the strategy and change management side. Next week, we're going to have Aaron from Gumloop joining us for a live build along AI agent session. And I'll drop the link also to next week's session in whoever's interested in joining that one. And let me just go there. Perfect. Okay, I just saw that I will need to make our guest co-host in 1 second. Let me do that. Let me find here. Sorry, one moment. Just some technical difficulties. And more. Make co-host. Confirm. Awesome. That should be good now, Phil. And finally, so on top of our YouTube channel, the live workshops we run every week, the other way that we're helping companies through basically upskilling their business teams on AI is through our AI First program for companies. This is how we help companies transition towards an AI first operating model. We start with AI literacy for the whole organization and then train a smaller group of future AI builders. If you're interested in hearing more about how we do this, feel free to use the link that I'm going to also drop in the chat right now. And then you can have a chat with us to see if this is something that we can potentially help your company with. Now, with that shameless plug out the way, we can get into let's say the reason why everyone's here, and I'm going to introduce our very special guest. Phil, did that work with bringing you on as a co-host?
I'm here, man. I'm ready to make dreams.
Let me spotlight you for everyone. I'm going to spotlight myself for everyone. And add spotlight. Perfect. All right, we're ready to rock and roll. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Maybe before I hand over to you for a quick introduction, just a reason from my side, like why I'm super excited for this session. Towards the end of last year, we actually had one of Phil's colleagues, Brandon, who's the Chief People Officer from Zapier, on for a session. It was one of the more popular 9x Live workshops that we ran. And Brandon really talked about this massive change that happened for you guys at Zapier and how you actually managed to transform your own organization. And then when I heard about the work that you're doing, is obviously one thing is a Zapier, which is, of course, an automation platform. You would assume that it maybe is easier for a company like Zapier to become AI first. But then when I hear about the work that you're doing with other companies and how you can actually then work with external companies that maybe have different challenges to what you have at Zapier, but still trying to achieve this same mission. So I'm super excited to find out all of the tips and tricks. Maybe, Phil, do you want to get started with just a quick introduction for whoever maybe doesn't know you yet?
For sure. And also, I love seeing the no code ops reference in the chat. Got some OG listeners. I love it.
Lovely.
Well, hey, y'all. My name is Lakin. I'm the head of enterprise innovation here at Zapier, which basically means I spend all of my time, like Jan said, doing this AI transformation work with companies externally to Zapier, right? So I take a lot of the stuff that we've kind of learned and done internally, my background in like citizen development and like no code ops stuff. And really help companies go 0 to 1 on this becoming an AI native company journey. So it's been super rad. Just by way of background, like, give you a quick rundown, like I was as non-technical as you could get, right? Like I was an actor before I was in tech. So like really is like out there. I ended up like starting my own guerrilla marketing company as like a way to just make ends meet. That ended up getting acquired by a tech company. That's where they asked me to like build my first app without any technical experience. I did that with like Zapier and Google Sheets and a tool called Pronto Forms. That was what kind of lit the fuse for me on all things no code. And now, yeah, and then I eventually got a job doing something pretty similar at a company called Compass, and then started No Code Ops, which was like the first community dedicated to like ops professionals, like doing no code stuff. And then we also, built some tooling. And then about a year and a half ago, we were acquired by Zapier, and so here I am. And we have learned so much at this point, purely by way of just doing it a lot. Right, like we like have like a boot camp that we've done like over 55 iterations of now. Like we've seen like what works and what doesn't work, and we're trying to translate what we've learned and done to now outside of our company, right? And the goal for today is to enable all of you, whether you are the change maker at your company, right, or you are an agency owner that is selling transformation as well, right, to other companies, is to empower you with a buffet of a playbook here that you can take what works and kind of leave the rest, right? Everyone's going to kind of have their own spin on this. And just so you know, this is our framework, but every time we deploy this on the ground at a company, stuff changes with it too, right? Because every company is fairly unique in how, what their employee population is, how they approach things. Do they want to go, centralized, decentralized, or hybrid? Like everyone's kind of got their own like baggage, history, and all that stuff. So this like, this changes a bit, right? So it's not like a strict formula. So, I'd love for you to kind of have that lens and approach it this way. I will be sharing a link for this at the end, so you will get this exact thing. So no worries there. And then I'm looking forward to just like sharing this playbook and then just having a really candid AMA with y'all on this front. And you totally open book. What's working, what's not working, all of that kind of jazz. That
And
sound
on
good?
that front, yeah, absolutely. And on that front, well, there will obviously be time for Q&A towards the end of the session, but we actually really want to make this as interactive as possible. So as Phil's sharing, there's obviously different steps or different parts to this playbook. And if there's a part that you want to dive deeper on, please use the chat. I'll be looking at that closely. And then if there's some questions that are probably more appropriate towards the end, we'll save them. But otherwise, what I'll do is I'll just basically rudely interrupt Phil and we'll jump straight into some questions. And let's make this as interactive as possible.
Yeah, please do. I love getting interrupted on this stuff, especially by someone as amazing as Jan.
Thank you very much.
So okay. Last quick thing before we hop in here. When it comes to all things, AI transformation, this world is just like there's parts of it that are evolving and like really new, and there's parts of it that are really old and come from the old school like citizen developer no code world. And the kind of thing here you'll see is that we're combining both of those things. And in the old school no code world, what we were missing really was, I think, two things, right? We were missing the hype from the C-suite that like that they're willing to put money into this thing. And we were and like a belief from that C-suite also that like this is possible, right? There was always this ceiling with no code where like the C-suite would give us some stuff and like the system development landscape, they're like like I don't know if this is really possible or these folks can really do this. Like at some point we're gonna have to give it to the devs. AI has completely removed that ceiling, right? And provided a willingness to experiment in like this like kind of citizen development space again in like a totally 2.0 fashion. And then also the second thing is AI has made these tools more accessible than ever, right? Like at Zapier, like we've used AI to make even working with AI even easier, right? So and a lot of companies have done that, right? So there is like this renewed sense that like this stuff is possible, more people should be doing it, especially post Shopify memo. If anyone's seen that, like there was a memo from the CEO of Shopify saying everyone in our company has to be AI forward, or you don't have a place here. And like, sure, that was aggressive, but like kind of lit a spark under every C-suite person around the world, right? It was like the memo heard around the world on this front. And so now more people than ever are open to this kind of idea of AI transformation for the whole company. And this is
100%. And I think what's like really to like really double down on the first point you mentioned around the C-suite, because 9X being a training company, before we had our AI first program, we had a very similar program which was just focused on automation, what you were referring to there as no code citizen development, how business teams can automate their own processes. The amount of interest from the C-suite around automation was very, very low. And now you have people coming out, like every C-suite around the company is saying, okay, how can we use AI? How can more of our team use AI? And then when you go in and show them that actually, okay, even when everyone's using ChatGPT and prompting away, but the real change happens when you start actually bringing this into automated processes. And now all of a sudden, automation is sexy again, and it's actually an interesting topic.
Automation is so sexy again, and I'm totally here for it. So yeah, Jan, also it was kind of like right time, right spot for all of us in the no code space, right? Like, oh wow, it felt like we were kind of like at an indie rock concert in someone's basement, and all of a sudden this artist went mainstream, right? So here we are. This is our literal six-figure AI transformation playbook at Zapier, and I am as Greg Eisenberg would say, I'm going to open up the doors and give you everything for free here. There is no light of day between what we do at Zapier with our clients and this. So here we go. I'm gonna go. Here we go. If it wants to work, there we go. Okay, cool. So to begin, right? AI transformation is not a tool rollout, right? Buying AI tools, running pilots, random pilots, measuring adoption, right? That's a spicy take. That AI transformation doesn't equal, right? You'll see a lot of stats around like, oh, how many people have adopted AI here? Yeah, that's cool, but like that doesn't gain business outcomes, right? It's one of the side effects of business outcomes that like the more people you have adopting AI, the more chances you'll have for business outcomes, but like causation doesn't equal correlation there, right? Like they're not the same thing. And then what we consider it is like really building an organizational capability here, changing how work is designed and showing, changing how like work flows through the organization on this front. And so, AI doesn't change the work, but like the operating model does. And like treating this as a capability and not just a tool, and like rethinking how all of this stuff works from the ground up is like what AI transformation kind of dreams are made of. So at Zapier, we start with a core belief. And the core belief is the goal isn't using AI. It is literally, like I said earlier, changing how this work gets discovered, designed, and delivered, right? It is a totally new approach to a lot of businesses who haven't played in the citizen development world yet, right? So, and I'm going to give you kind of our take on like, when companies will say, well, we don't want everyone being a developer here. We don't want, 40 different CRMs. It's like, that's not what we're aiming for here. And I'm going to describe the difference between like kind of citizen development 1.0 versus citizen development 2.0 with that is driven by AI.
And Phil, like on the point there that you said, like the fact that you really highlight here, AI transformation does not equal a tool rollout. Is this something like what made you guys point that out so much as a sticking point? Is it that you are actually the CEOs out there that have just said, okay, like, yeah, we got everyone ChatGPT Pro licenses and like now we should be good to go? Was that the like,
yeah,
say the thinking
100%.
of some companies?
100%. That's the thing behind it. So founders, CEOs, often make this mistake that they think that everybody else thinks like them, right? And people don't, right? Some people do, right? But not everybody does. Not everyone's excited by change. Not everyone's excited by new tools, right? And so, when founders find out about new tools capabilities, we have this brain of like, oh, I want to learn everything about it and, spend all night experimenting with it, right? And I think that like figure it out people, right, are like that too. But like not everybody is like that. So just giving, access to a tool is not enough, right? It's also, how does that tool fit into the strategy, right? And as well as like, enabling folks with a tool is a lot more work than a lot of people give it credit for, even if we think it's easy or fun or exciting, right? As on like the C-suite or founder level. And so it really is a hand-holding process.
Yeah.
Like I've worked with some of the biggest companies in the world and some of the smartest professionals in the room. And like, I literally will have to show them like step by step how to build their first, Zap with an AI step in it. And it's like totally mind blowing and revolutionary for them, right? Like we in this bubble of like the AI world, like all of us who are constantly on LinkedIn in communities like 9x, right? Early adopters of these tools. We have like we live in this bubble where everyone's like at the cutting edge. Most of the world is not there yet, like
Yeah.
not even close. And so we've really got to like sit with people and like design an environment for aha moments to take place. And that aha moment does not take place when you just give someone a new thing and like, here, figure it out. It's at best, it's overwhelming. At worst, it's underutilized.
100%. Maybe that's actually a good point because you were mentioning on the different types of companies you're working with. That might be a good frame for the rest of the conversation. What are the typical types of companies that have gone through this program or that you've worked with
Yeah.
together? Is it a little bit like let's say, is it a little bit of a cheat code that if they're already a Zapier customer, they already sort of have one foot in the door in terms of like, oh, we want more of our business people automating and things like that, or is it a wide mix of companies that you
We
work?
have both, and I'll go into that in a bit, right? Like we've got some companies that we've done this with where like they literally just started using Zapier because of this. We've got some companies that have never that have used it before in some capacities. But like we also work across all tools in this front, right? It's not just like Zapier is just the AI orchestration
Yeah.
layer. We like work across all the tools it connects to as well and all the different models. Um, but who when me and my team are coming in and like working with a company on this front, what on the AI transformation front, typically it's like 100+ person company, right, all
Yeah.
the way up to like the big corporates and just maybe even like large departments in those corporates, right? Like we like work with Fortune 500 companies on this front. We work with like startups that are like at Series A and like 100+ people, right? Like that, and anywhere in between. But the core belief has to be the same, where it's like they want this to be a capability in the org, not just a tool.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yep.
And are there any departments within those companies that are typically like either the company saying, "Hey, we want you to work with these guys first," because it's like either it's the main priority, or
Yeah.
on the flip side, is there certain departments that are more receptive to this than others?
Yeah, anything in the GTM world, people love working with them first because it's just safer on the revenue side, right? So investing in GTM is always a good idea. Anything that's a cost center like CX, HR, legal, right? Like there might be cool stuff there, but a lot of that is seen as like productivity and time saving stuff. And like that just doesn't get like those are more second order benefits when it comes to like C-suite buy-in. Then it's like, oh, can this person make us more revenue? Or like, can we chop off this huge piece of software that we're paying for that someone can instead just design because they know how to use AI, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I think that's a good intel for a lot of the agency owners out there, because naturally, when you look on LinkedIn, all of the most viral workflows that are getting shared are in GTM. Because
yeah,
exactly that, that's where companies are willing to spend money on, even though there's equally impressive use cases in finance, in HR, and also like that a lot of the use cases can actually transfer, right? As if you're looking at a
yes,
sales funnel or a sales pipeline, there's very similar steps or similar automations that could be applied to a recruiting pipeline, for instance.
that's right.
And so it's very interesting that that GTM seems to be the main focus for a
Yeah,
lot of
I
folks.
would say last thing on that front would be like get in the door with GTM workflows and capabilities, right? Or like working with that part of the organization and then make yourself a permanent resident of the house and being really sticky by working with all those other departments, right? Like
100%. Yeah.
the one side will get you in the door, the other side will keep you from, getting fired as the agency of record. So this is the other part of what we do at Zapier. And this, has definitely been a bit controversial, or like we haven't, like we've said no to working with some clients on this front because like some companies are like, we don't want to waste our time doing this. We're like, great. Like that's not the way that we do things. This is the way that we do things. So we believe that everybody should go through the front door. And so if we're working with a, 200-person company, every single person at this company in a small 10 to 20 person group is going through our AI bootcamp, right? It's a 90-minute hands-on boot camp. It's small groups, and every single person goes through it, intern to CEO. We don't care if you have tons of experience, no experience, you've barely even talked to ChatGPT. But every single person builds something, and every single person sees what's possible. My cheat code here, it's funny actually, Jan, this is like a GTM workflow. So You don't have to make these boot camps hyper specific. The workflow that we teach people to do is like really, really, really simple, and everybody builds the same flow. Maybe I'll adjust the language for it by the department that I'm working with. Like sometimes I'll call it a ticket, sometimes I'll call it a lead, sometimes, whatever, right? Like a contract request. But it's all the same idea. It's somebody submits a form, right? Um, that form, we custom write an email using AI, and then that email then gets sent out to that person. And then what we do is we add a delay step to show that, like, make it feel a little bit more human. And then we also add an agent that can go on the internet with that lead information and classify that lead based on our internal docs, whether that's like a yes, no, or maybe lead. And if it's yes, it'll, go down that workflow I mentioned earlier. If it's no, it'll drop them into some email sequence. And then if it's maybe, we'll do like a human in the loop Slack command, right? Where it's like you
Yeah.
get all the information and you can decide which path it goes down. Really, really simple workflow. But for a lot of people, and everyone submitted an online form, so everyone kind of gets it, right? But what it shows folks is like, oh, wow, these are all the different parts. Like, this is where I would use AI versus using an AI step versus using an agent. Here's why a deterministic workflow is a great way to piece all of those things together. Here's where human in the loop works, right? And they start to get this sense of building blocks that are available to them. And then what they do is they imagine kind of like what's possible, and we help them do that at the end of the workshop, right? And so a lot of people think that, like, for these workshops you have to like present demos of like very specific use cases, or like you really have to talk very hyper specific to folks. And like we found over like 55 iterations of this workshop, like that is just not true. You can like do that one workflow with any department and they'll imagine what they can do with it. And so the goal here, though, is not that everyone leaves that workshop now they have this like newfound like, oh wow, this works. The goal is not to turn everyone into a builder. It's to change how everybody sees this work. Because we know that if we do this well, we will essentially get every person will fall into one of two buckets, right? So this kind of workshop kind of acts like a centrifuge for us when we're going across an organization and doing it with everybody. And what that centrifuge results in is these two types of profiles. One is the human smoke detector and one is the builder, right? And so in the human smoke detector, this will be your like 70, depending on the type of org and how innovative, right? Like 60 to 80% of the folks will land in this bucket, right? These are your see something, say something crowd. They don't need to build ever again. Maybe some of them will do some productivity stuff with AI, but they don't need to build ever again. Maybe they'll be end users of this stuff, whatever. But they are the people that now have this language and like saw what's possible by getting hands-on with it. That they will now start to naturally notice broken processes, redundant tooling that you're way overpaying for at a company, or manual work that should no longer exist. Because they've built something, they have this language. Most people don't even know this stuff is even possible, right? And so now their role is like really critical and simple, right? It's just recognize single, surface that opportunity early to the right people. Companies don't think there's value in this stuff. And it's the craziest thing to me, because when people don't invest in human smoke detectors, all the ideas for what to build comes from like the top. And like the top has no idea about the on the ground friction that's actually going on in their companies. These people do. Now, that's kind of, so what we do there is we spread the surface area of innovation. We get way more ideas and like, and a channel for these folks to go and get value, from being a part of, right? Then on the other side of the people that come out of this are the builders. And we typically say there's like three types of builders. There are the known champions. This is no surprise to anybody. These are like, the people in an organization that they knew they were going to go into this workshop and they were going to like, they're already doing this stuff, right? There's the hidden champions, who are people that were like tinkering with this stuff outside of work, maybe, or kind of interested and curious, but never really doing this stuff at work. And then there's the discovered champions, people that they're like, whoa, I didn't even think that I would enjoy this. I love this. This is amazing. And when we go through, that's why we go through all of this work in the beginning for these workshops, because we know that we are both creating more human smoke detectors and we are like finding and discovering talent to then invest in when we work with that company, right? And those will be like the builder population. And all of those builders will then create what we call, that's famously called like the center of excellence. Jan, any questions or thoughts or things from the chat
Yeah,
on this front?
absolutely. Like one question from my side, and I think it's like really interesting on the 90-minute boot camp, and like exactly some of the things you mentioned is what we've experienced as well. Something that I find quite difficult to overcome, and I'd love to see how you're solving this, is the case of there's going to be some people, like you said, that are just straight to becoming these champions. They just get it. They see one Zapier workflow and immediately they have 100 ideas of other things they could build.
Yep.
But then, for instance, you show like, let's say, if you show a marketing, let's say you show a marketing person an example of an AI workflow where invoice comes in, AI reads it and extracts all the invoice points. It's like a finance use case. A marketing person might sit there and go, yeah, okay, that's cool, but what does it do for me? And they don't have that connection that, oh, actually, that every time there's a new industry report from one of our competitors, we could use the exact same workflow, extract a bunch of LinkedIn post ideas and make a workflow out of it. There's some people find it harder to see these patterns of workflows and processes, and they don't have these ideas sparking to their head. So how do you have any tips in that 90-minute boot camp?
I do. I address that really, really, really early in the workshop, right? I say something like, look, today I'm going to show you an inbound lead workflow, right? But as we're going through this workflow and as I show them the design of it, I go, what are other triggers that can trigger this thing that you can think of, right? What are other actions that this thing could take across systems that you would care about, right? So I get them imagining those things in that way. And then throughout the journey, I'm also prompting them to think like, well, we submitted a form here, but like, what else could get submitted here? What else could trigger this thing? Could it be a new email? How would that be related to one of your processes, right? And then we also teach a framework of thinking here called FAR, which is a frequent, annoying, and repeatable. And we also have those folks, like once we give them the language of triggers and actions, and we give them language of like that different apps can connect, and we give them some idea of like how AI could be brought into a workflow. Before we even show them what our workflow is, we have them imagine different things, right? And once we give them those initial building blocks, those things all get better by the end after they've actually built the thing. But like, if you are teaching one of these workshops in a generalized workflow for like multiple folks, which is like very common in the AI transformation space when like you're doing these, you got to set that context early on, or else people will just tune out. They're like, well, this isn't for me. And it's like,
yeah, 100%. Really nice question here from Robert. How do you handle the naysayers, the ones that will say, yeah, but the AI won't be able to handle my work. My work's too nuanced, too important. It's not going to be able to get it.
Yeah, I would just agree with them. I just be like, no, dude, you're right. You're probably doing a bunch of stuff that is like, you don't, by like getting defensive, like, it doesn't help people engage, right?
Yeah.
You just like, look, I agree. There's probably parts of your stuff that are really, really incredibly hard and difficult and like only you could do. However, there's probably also parts of your work that are manual and tedious and annoying and, are frequent, annoying, and repeatable that like, if AI could do maybe even 2% more than you could imagine it to, that would save you more time to then do the more valuable stuff.
100%. Yeah. And like, what's a big common misconception or like like, let's say an objection that we hear quite a lot is like, what's so interesting is if people can't see an automation, like let's say I have a process that I need to work on half an hour every day. If I can't build an AI automation that handles 100%, then people are like, I'm not interested. Whereas actually, like, there's so many processes where all we use AI and automation for is making that workflow so much more comfortable. Like, rather than me clicking between 3 different tools, everything's right there in Notion, and then I can still make my decision. But actually, the act of automating that part and just making your workflow more comfortable and automating 80% of what's possible and leaving you the 20% still has a massive impact.
Massive impact, right? And it reduces cognitive load, right? Which is and context switching, which is very, very powerful for people to lean into their superpowers. And so here's how we think about center of excellence and how the mechanism works when we do. So what we do, we go into a company, we go, we talk to, we do these workshops with every single person. Minimum, everyone's a human smoke detector, 60, 80%. The other 20% we identified as builders, right? We start leaning into those builders as the center of excellence. Now, we don't just say, take all the ideas from the, that come from the human smoke detectors or yourselves or from the builders and just go build everything. We don't do that, right? What we say is we actually work with the C-suite and identify like, what are the things that you care about, right? Like, what are the stories that we want to tell, the public, your board, your investors, your customers, and the whole company? Like, what are the things that we want to say? And by the way, we never suggest things like saving hours or saving time or general things like, percent adopted, right? Like, we don't care about that stuff. What we care about is like business metrics that actually matter to you, and can we help achieve those faster or like double those, whatever, with the use of this stuff. Like, what are those big kind of meaty goals that you can talk about? Like recently, like UPS had this thing, like they saved like 41 or something percent like that on like fuel costs because of like an AI initiative internally, right? It's stuff like that that are like, what are the headline things that the execs are really going to care about? So we work with them to identify and shape those and stay away from the like, oh, percent adopted or number stuff. And then we give that, we help translate that to the COE, and we say when we get ideas from the front line to understand the friction of stuff, that's kind of the lightning, and this other thing is the bottle. And what we do together is we bottle the lightning, right? We give it a shape, right? So we know how to prioritize based on those things. And for the center of excellence, right? Like, we typically have like 1 or 2 reps from any given team. We're evaluating, against that shared standard, right? We're sequencing work based on that. And then we're finding like what we really want to be our landmark things, right, with them that we want to, spend time internally marketing, including our executive business reports. By the way, if you're an agency and you're working, you got brought in to do this across company, and you're not doing quarterly executive business reports on this front at a minimum, big red flag, right? Like, you've got to be telling the stories about this work. The work will never tell the story of itself, ever. And yeah,
And Phil, what does one of those reviews look like for someone who's like literally just getting started?
Yeah, great question. So they will typically say something around the lines of, look, this, quarter we focused on work with these departments. Here are the orchestrations that, high level, like that we created, and here's the outcome that they produced or started to make numbers and metrics and movements against. Here's also some qualitative quotes from the ground around workers that are way more happy with this process than how it was working before. Here's maybe some quotes from customers of like, wow, like, so a CEO won't care necessarily about the process you built to make SLAs shorter with AI. What they will care about is a customer saying something like, wow, it used to take 3 hours to get a response. Now it takes 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
That they care about, or NPS scores going up, right? Like, so you lead with that headline of like, those things, and never underestimate the power of like story and qualitative stuff as well as quantitative there. So we would include all of that stuff, and then we'd say for next quarter, here's the departments that we're really focused on working with, or the workflows that we're really, interested in on doing. And then we don't consider the COE like a gate. It's just like, it's the system that makes all this stuff possible at scale. The reality is, when everyone can do stuff, right? Like when everyone's a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? We want to focus that energy on like, what is the stuff that is going to drive results here. And so a lot of kind of like, automation companies, AI companies, whatever, they'll start with just like, hey, use cases, like, let's get a really good use case on the board, and like, then we'll lean in more there. And like, we actually don't believe in that. That's a lot of how like Zapier used to work with enterprise companies, and can kind of still do if they just view us as like an iPaaS tool. But like, now in this transformation lens, we don't talk about use cases really at all, like early on. We're just like, I'll just say to folks, if they're seriously considering this like AI transformation package we offer, I just go, cool, give me 10 to 15 of your folks, and like, let's put them through a no strings attached boot camp. And then let what they say at the end and the results that we capture from that and the surveys that we do, like, let that speak for itself, right? And that kind of proves like a microcosm, right? Like, I don't want to come up with the ideas. I want your team to come up with it once I've given them the language by which to do this. And maybe then we'll take a use case that came out of the lens of that group, and like, we'll further help them build it to prove it out. But like, we don't ever start there.
And on that point,
Yeah.
Phil, because you mentioned like giving a group to go through the initial boot camp, but I guess what's also important is what happens after the 90-minute session, and how employees can make sure that they're finding enough time to actually play around with this stuff and
Yep.
build out their first workflows. Because another thing that we really see as a, let's say, something that pulls against this transformation is they do a boot camp, they're super excited, they're super energized, but then tomorrow you're back to your day job because you've got an end of quarter targets to hit, and you've got, let's say you're a person in sales, you've got X amount of calls to make, and you won't be able to ever build that automation that will then save you time. So how do you, is it convincing are you talking to the C levels when
Yeah,
it comes
it's a
to this?
great question.
Yeah.
So when we work with companies, we design time for employees to stop their work and do this stuff, especially the COE folks, right?
Yeah.
So not everybody, right? But definitely at least the COE folks, right? Because like if I'm working with a 5,000 person organization, right? Like I'm not going to say everybody gets like 3 days off to go experiment with stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'll at least get 90 minutes from the most folks, and then with everyone else, I'm negotiating more time up front. Is thing one. Thing two is I like to tell CEOs, imagine like and this came from our one of our VPs, Evangelist Mushtaba. Imagine like you're pushing a cart with like square wheels, right? And I'm like, hey man, I've got these really awesome other round wheels over here. Now it's gonna take a few minutes to stop and sit down and like, replace these things. And they're like, no, I just gotta keep pushing this thing. And it's like, okay, like it does take time to stop and rethink stuff. And that happens both, and you're right, Jan, on like the individual level that happens,
Yeah.
right? For productivity stuff, on the team level and on the company level. It takes time to sit back and go, hold on here, let's reimagine this stuff. Now, to get that buy-in, you do have to stack up some small wins, right? And like gain some. This part of the reason we do that boot camp is like a trial to like show, whoa, like if we actually paused and gave people the time to learn this stuff, they actually do have way better ideas than we do.
Yeah.
Right. And they'll do it. They'll build it. So it's like a microcosm of showing that. But the other area is like we're not asking for it from everybody, right? We're just asking for it from a group of folks that the company is comfortable with, right? It's really what it comes down to. Now, we do in our year-long transformation journey with companies, we do have like 2 company-wide hackathons that we do, and those are really cool, and that's like very cross-departmental. But like those are like that's the big commitment I'm asking for. So I'm just careful on like how much of a commitment I ask for. The other thing is that we after we do boot camps, even without the COE yet formed, we open up office hours and we're in Slack or Teams with them as well. And so typically we find that there's 2 big blockers to folks continuing their education here after the excitement. One is like I don't have the time, right? Which you can, solve proactively by making that time proactively for folks and inviting them to it. The other one is I'm getting stuck, right? Like I got stuck and, I'm just going to give up, right? Like, oh, this off didn't work or whatever. And so that's where you really want to sit down with people and capitalize during office hours on like that excitement.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I think on that point that you mentioned is a great question that we had in the chat. I'm also very interested in because you mentioned there's Slack and Teams. How do you manage people stuck in Microsoft Office for doing most of their work? Because typically, as anyone in automation knows, like there's so many things that just like Google Docs automations work with Slack and everything like that, and then Microsoft just make everything so much harder. So what's the strategy there with the Microsoft folks?
Oh, the first thing I do is I apologize. I'm just like, ooh, I'm so sorry. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a Microsoft shop guy. I'm a Google and Teams guy, or Google and Slack guy all the way. It's funny. Me and my wife have this pact that if any company tried to ever hire either of us, and no matter what the salary was, could be $10 million a year, if they were on Teams and Microsoft, we would say no. That's like how much I dislike that setup, right? But I'll say this, right? I was working with a client the other day who's like living in, mainly living in Teams today, right? And look, you got to work with you got to start with where you're at, right? And the good news is that in the Microsoft shop, they have Power Automate, right? And is that at the level of usability and connectivity and kind of all the stuff of Zapier? No, right? But you got to kind of start with what you got usually, even if it's not the most ideal version of the thing, and then show the pains and the cracks in it the more you try to do things. So I was working with a customer the other day where they're using Automate and Copilot at their company, right? and it's clearly not up to the task of certain things. And it's like, I mean, someone literally sent me this quote the other day. It's like, wow, what took me an hour to do in Automate took me 5 minutes to do in Zapier with
Yeah.
Zapier Copilot, right? And it's like, that's awesome, but like your company's not going to greenlight it based on that, right? Like you've got to start training folks and doing stuff with what you have already, and then show eventually how much easier it can be. Like you've got to build that momentum
Yeah.
with what you've already got first. So it sucks. It's not as good, a lot of that stuff that's just kind of built in because it's like a side product for a lot of these bigger companies, right? It's not like the main focus. But I still think like sometimes you just got to start there. Like if you're working in AI transformation and like you're working with some big company and like they're mainly on Microsoft, the first thing you can't do is be like, all right, well, the first thing we got to do is get everyone on Google. Like, good luck with that contract.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just like the one thing that where it gets super tricky in terms of the on the individual level and trying to get people excited into this change, because there's so many parts that need to happen, right? That you mentioned first is you have this boot camp, then you have the people that are becoming champions, becoming builders. They have these ideas, but then if their first idea, because they might see a workflow of like someone else did an automation in Notion or in Google, and they get super excited, they have the idea for the workflow, but they get all of a sudden blocked because just Microsoft doesn't support that one thing, right? And
Yep.
the real issue there happens is just that the motivation can fall completely because all of a sudden something that you think should have been simple, like you said, is now you're turning into an engineer reading documentation of trying to come up with some workaround, and it just it kills motivation
You've
altogether.
just got to make it easy for folks, right? And
Yeah,
even if that means like starting with where they're at, like making that first build really, really easy and understandable for them. You know what I mean? And like you as a vendor can be bringing in a tool. You as a internal person can be like, hey, let's like use a Zapier, or let's use, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I'm just thinking of like random CRMs like Adio, right?
yeah,
Like, let's use something a little bit more 2.0 and advanced, right? Like, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of like great ways to build momentum with newer tools and get buy-in for them. But like, you just got to you only get so many belief chips at any given time.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, on the metrics front, because I just want to get through this because I want to make some time for
Yeah,
questions here also. Um, I mentioned this earlier. I don't really care about when we're working with a company like time saved, adoption rates, and tool counts. I much more care about like revenue impact, output multiplied, cost avoided, and like strategic KPIs that they already care about, right? So that's like the way that I think about these. Um, Companies will also be like, well, how does Zapier, like Phil, like you and your team at Zapier, when you're coming into a company, like where do you fit in? It's like, well, one, we bring a really solid playbook, which is literally what I just showed you, right? Two, we bring people. So like we literally assign a part-time resource to that company who is their dedicated lead. To get hired in this role at Zapier, like it is an insanely high bar. It's, people who have background in like, education, change management. They're also tinkering and building with AI constantly. They were probably already in the no code world, right? Like, so like these are like really advanced, not just builders, but enablers. And so you get a part-time resource in that. And then we also bring the systems by which to do this stuff. And so we're providing a ton of hours on the ground with your team here. And so, like when this goes beyond like AI transformation of the company becomes like a priority, especially beyond like 250 people, it's way more than like a one person job. And so typically what we will do is we will come in and support that one person who got, either voluntold or volunteered as the leader of the AI change, and just give them superpowers, right? To help with all of this stuff. If the company doesn't have an AI transformation lead, that's okay. We do require, though, that they give us the flexibility to find and develop someone within the company to be that, or go and give us the ability to eventually help them go and hire that person internally. We won't work with orgs where they're trying to outsource everything to us.
yeah,
They have to have that internal person. And then the end state, right, is like, we want to be able to say, hey, look, here's what we changed by the end of the year. Here's how work flows now versus here, how it used to. Here's the ROI, like very specifically that we unlocked. I, with my team, typically aim for like 4x minimum, right, of like hard dollar cost. And then, so every dollar you put into us, we should be able to say, here's the hard dollar amount that you made either in more revenue or cost savings in terms of like profitability. We should be able to 4x. And then here's, why that compounds over time. And so, uh, yeah, that's how we view AI transformation at Zapier, and like what me and my team go in and do with companies. And, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment here, and I'll bring this over. Hold on. Jan, any questions on the chat or from your end before I kind of open it up to the floor?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe one question before I go into a few from the chat, because obviously you mentioned there for the people that are in this like center of excellence, and so after the boot camp, there's then the regular office hours. What is the touch points then like with you and your team with the
Yeah.
C-suite or either the AI transformation? So like,
Yep.
how much time are you investing into actually making sure the transformation happens in terms of training the people? And how much time are you spending on more like what you'd say account management, making sure that the right level of buy-in is there and the check-ins with the people that need to know things are working?
Yeah, great question. So we're spending a ton of time with the C-suite up front, right, to understand like their goals and stuff, and then we pretty much just talk to them quarterly, and we talk to line of business leaders as we're working, specifically on like projects with their COE rep. COE, we meet once a week with them, and once a week with them. We meet once a week or once every other week, also with directly with the transformation lead at the company.
Yeah.
We also spend a lot of time coaching that person. A lot of times that person has done a lot of building work. Like they've done a lot of building and like tinkering, but they haven't done like training, or they've done training and not a lot of building and tinkering. Like they're a change, management person or enabler who like has done a lot of the AI stuff. And like we can work with either side, but it takes work either way to like really get that person to like where we want them to be. And so we do a lot of one-on-one work with them. We are at least once or twice a month like working in like a co-build workshop where like we're literally co-building stuff alongside of like a predetermined thing that we've identified with the COE. So we're bringing on our solutions architects to help with that. We're doing 2 hackathons, like I said, over the course of the year with the entire company. And then we're doing those quarterly executive business reviews with the execs. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of touch points. Like we are, and then by the way, and then we're available in Slack like all the time for folks, right? And that is 3 folks. That is like their CSM, their technical account manager, and their AI transformation lead from our side, who's basically like a part-time employee that's embedded throughout the course of the year.
Makes a ton of sense. And like one question in the chat, every engagement's like minimum 1 year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have some that we've done where it's just like, a team will want like one team specifically for a certain amount of time. Like we're getting more and more flexible on that stuff. Like we've just started doing that, but our early ones were just 1 year long, and now like we're getting more flexible there. But yeah,
Yeah.
short answer is we're figuring that out.
Gotcha. I think because there's obviously a few people here in like starting their own AI consulting business as maybe like a just by themselves, and a few questions around like the offer and also pricing. I'm not sure how much you can get into that, and also I guess it probably isn't as relevant since I guess it's some sort of combination of tooling and consulting that you're
Yeah, it's
selling them.
tooling
But
and consulting, but let's just say like it's starting in like the low to mid 6 figures for us to
yeah,
like to get involved and like
yeah,
that year-long transformation journey, right?
yeah,
Um, and that's also including like Zapier as well, right? For like that full kind of thing. So you can extrapolate from there, whether it's like, more people, and like that's also typically in like call it like the, 3 to 500 person-ish company range.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important as well. Like even if maybe that budget is sounding shocking to some people, maybe they're working with smaller companies or things like that. But when a big company, if you're not getting a buy-in at that level and also have the money behind it, it won't work anyway, right? If they're not
Yeah.
willing to put that
Yeah.
money down, it's not gonna work.
Also, I like to scare for the consultants. I like to scare folks away. Like I'm just like, look, this thing, is like minimum, like low to mid 6 figures. Like if that's not what we're talking, like here's some resources and like here's some stuff, but like it's probably not a good fit for me and my team,
Yeah,
right? Because we heavily invest. And I think we seriously, even still compared to like the big fours of the world, way undercharged for the value that we actually create. Like, because it's just early days. That is one thing. The second part there is like, Yeah, I see more consultants like way undercharging for what they do than like, charging too much. Like you should all be whatever you charge now, you should probably be charging double for this
Yeah.
stuff. But you've got to also be able to prove it, right?
Absolutely. And on that side, how do you tinker the edges of not getting too hands-on with people? Like, let's say then once you're in the building phase and there's the office hours and they've got the use cases, how do you
Yeah.
avoid that temptation of some of your team and your
We'll just go and build it for you.
exactly?
We don't do it, right? Like the max extent my team will get involved on that front because we're training a capability here is like we will co-build something with you, but like we're not going to take complete ownership of anything. We're not trying to like stick around and like be the maintenance people of that thing. And maybe that's some other folks' business model and that's cool too, but like we're trying to give you the capability here. We're not trying to give you the how do you say, like be the maintenance folks. By the way, that brings up another really good point in AI transformation that I'll just, outwardly admit something sucks about this business model, right? When it comes to being in transformation or enablement on this front, uh, it's it's a shitty outcome both ways for you as a consultant if you don't play your cards right, right? The option one, you do your job really well and they're enabled. Now they don't need you anymore, right? Or option two, you didn't do your job, you didn't enable them, and then they're not going to need you also, right? You didn't do your job, right? So
Yeah.
you're kind of out of a job either way, whether you do good or bad. The way that I and like especially at like Zapier like to think about that is like, look, like one, we have invested interest because like we're all selling a tool, but even if we weren't selling a tool, there are other things to sell down the road should companies be successful at this. It's just not more enablement, right? It has to do with like, operationalizing this, right? It's like all the things that come from when more people are doing this stuff, it generates more things that need help. And like, you've got to think of yourself as like, how do we become maybe like the back office admins for like all the things that need approval or like, documentation and like stuff like that? Like, how do you keep the wheels on the track when all these people are doing this stuff? It's less about enablement and more about like the governance, observability, kind of scalability of this stuff. And you
Yeah.
gotta transform what you offer.
100%. All right, let's I'll get into some questions from the chat. There were three different ones all around the bootcamp format. So I'll just like list them off high level. One of them, which was like, what are the top three stories or examples that you show in the 90-minute session to get them on fire? There was another question around when you walk into a big enterprise and don't know yet what's possible, what's the most effective show don't tell move that you can give in that first week or in that first 90-minute session. And then there was another question, which I think you touched on about how you determine the best examples to show, but all around like what are the good examples? You touched on it a little bit earlier, but can you dive in a bit more?
Yeah. So when I'm working with an org, the reality is that no example I show will really do the overall trick. That's
Yeah.
right. What I'm doing is, and this is like why, like, let's say I'm talking to a VP somewhere and they're like, hey, like, what can this thing do? Maybe I'll give them like a quick overview, but that's not even the thing that sells them. Remember, what sells people on transformation is what you're able to do with their people,
Yeah.
right? Not what you're able to show them and wow them with technology, right? They're not trying to buy a consultant. They're trying to, get that capability. And so what I do and like what we do at Zapier, right, is I show everyone this very simple GTM example. I say,
Yeah.
someone submits a lead form. Let's just automatically shoot them an email back saying, hi, first name, thanks for signing up. Here's my Calendly link. I say, that's a simple workflow, right? I said, now let's add an AI step to that workflow. Instead of you having to go back and forth with ChatGPT and copying and paste stuff, right? Like we can do that for you. And then we show, cool, here's how to customize the email and subject line based on the input they gave. And then I show, well, instead of scoring all of those manually, what if an AI agent can go and look at their website and score them for you, right? And then say yes, no, or maybe, right? And then I also like add the human in the loop for the maybe. I show their people in that 10, 15 person group that not because I want them all to be building GTM workflows, but because I want them to think, oh, I know how forms work. Well, and I'm showing them along the way what that can mean for them. Then I'm having them come up with ideas, right? And then we have two versions of our bootcamp. We've got like the kind of like 90-minute one, and then we've got like a 3-4 hour one. And the 3-4 hour one is basically that first part. And then the second part, we actually do like a small hackathon where like we coach them through builds, where they come up with ideas, we help them refine the ideas, they break out into groups to actually build those ideas with us. my favorite part of those is at the end, we do like a show and tell for the execs. And I'll never forget, we were on site with one client and the COO of this like pretty big company was like, holy shit, George, you're a freaking accountant. You built that? You know, like that's they have the ideas in their minds already.
Yeah.
It's your job to just unlock what's possible and show it off.
Yeah, 100%. A really great question from Robert here, and I'll expand on it a bit further. But he asked, how do you handle the unknown operating budget of AI tokens? And I think not even just like the cost of like running AI tokens, but also in the case of a Zapier or whatever automation tool is being used, you pay based on consumption, right? On
Yeah,
Zaps. And what?
great.
Yeah,
Just tell them that's a luxury problem.
yeah,
That's it. If you're at the point where you're worried about the consumption of your tasks, you are in like the top, X% of companies, right? We'll then work to whittle that back down. Let's actually have a goal of making that a problem.
yeah, 100%. And I think it's important conversation to have early. Like we had a really great, like one of the boot camps we run, we just had a CTO that totally got this, but he actually also had the team in place. He like had some engineers assigned to when these workflows start taking off, let's have an engineer look at about how you can make it more efficient afterwards, right? But what you shouldn't stifle is that initial get them building. I think that is the most important part. Getting them building early, and it will happen to everyone. Like you're building your first automation, you make a mistake, there's an endless loop or something that happens. But important is to not like burn and shame that person because then they won't even try again.
110%. By the way, oh no, Jan, I'm gonna put
Yeah,
two things in this chat for. I just realized I was sending them to you and not everyone.
yeah,
So let me do this right now. This is the playbook, a link to the playbook that you can swipe, and a link to book time with me. I've opened up like a few slots on my calendar for this group. So definitely just be on the potentially faster side of booking it. But like, if you are interested in talking about like having Zapier come into your company and like doing more of this stuff, I'm happy to chat with you on that front. If you are even just like the general, person or consultant kind of thinking about the stuff, also happy to chat too. But like, that's a way to book time with me and Jam and kind of get some one-on-one questions answered. And then the playbook is right there. And then also, yeah, feel free to also add me on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty active in my DMs there as well.
and what people might realize is just how generous Phil is. You may have shot yourself in the foot there because a question earlier from Lorenzo, which I loved, was how much would it be to have a private call with Phil?
Yeah, you can just start with that. If you want like more time, just like privately with me, you can also just like shoot me a DM. Always happy. But like, there's that. And then lastly, the best way to keep up in touch with like all the stuff that I'm working on, like in and out of Zapier and all things like AI transformation, figure it out person stuff, jobs that I'm finding in this space, is to sign up for free to Go Figure, which is it's where I text an SMS and WhatsApp like a short kind of newsletter out on a regular basis with all of this kind of stuff that I'm learning and job opportunities and kind of all that stuff.
Amazing, amazing. Phil, do you have time for one more question?
Always.
Oh, nice. Because it wouldn't be like we've got a bit of a European audience here as well. So, how do you handle the security, like the additional security concerns, let's say, that comes with working with the enterprise?
Hold on. Someone said they need permission for the playbook.
Yeah.
Let me make sure.
And like just for everyone as well, like both the links that Phil shared, I'll also be sharing them via email with the recording tomorrow as well.
Love it. I just unlocked that for
Yeah.
everybody. Cool. So now you should be able to see the playbook.
Yeah. So onto the fun European question when it comes to regulation, security. We can't trust AI with our customer data. We can't trust AI with these sort of things. So is it a discussion that you're actually having, or the companies you're working with already made that decision?
Yeah, it is. But here's the one thing I'll say on that. Way too often, people are trying to sell what's possible and get buy-in to do all these big things before people have even seen what's possible, right? Yeah. So the regulation, privacy, all those conversations, those are really tough conversations to have and like get naysayers to, go yes and buy in on. The way that you overcome those is you build a lot of momentum with the business stakeholder first. Know that you have the ability to do that stuff in a safe way, whether it's
Yeah.
like an offline model or enterprise version of ChatGPT or whatever it is, right? And if you don't get access to people's systems, and by the way, we do this all the time at Zapier, right? And this is like why, by the way, the example I give doesn't touch people's systems in the business workflow that like we teach
Yeah.
at all. It's like all dummy stuff. Just build a dummy version of their
Yeah.
thing. Like treat a Google Sheet like an app, like Salesforce, right? And show them how you would do that with dummy data. If you're not building dummy data sets with ChatGPT, you're missing a big opportunity. Like just build realistic looking dummy data sets and treat those SaaS apps, like different sheets, and like show people the power of it. Show, don't tell that power. Get the buy-in from the business stakeholder. Know that the thing is possible to secure and be compliant with, and then go to have that other conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think another nice like workaround on top of dummy data as well is even when they're getting to build out their first AI automations, you can start with just like a custom GBT. And the first step is like download the data manually from Salesforce, remove the personal information, run it through that custom GBT, and then you're already showing the C levels like what impact this can have. And then you can go about the discussions of, hey, let's connect Salesforce to Zapier so we can actually automate some of this stuff, right? Rather than people just going and asking, hey, can we connect Salesforce with Zapier before actually showing the use case and showing what value it's going to bring.
That's right. You got to build it beforehand.
Yeah.
I've got to jump, but like I said, the playbook is there. If you want to book time and chat with me, I put the link there. If you want, more time with me or like whatever, like feel free to shoot me a LinkedIn DM. And then if you just want to keep up with all the cool kind of stuff that I'm finding out and learning along the way, because I'm learning here every day, or job opportunities on this front, just feel free to sign up for free for Go Figure. And yeah, Jan, thanks for having me. This is a great audience. These were phenomenal questions and a great group.
It's thanks so much for joining us, Phil. We've got a few regulars on the show, and I think we might need to make you one of them. So
here we go. More time with you, man.
Absolutely.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Awesome. All right, then Phil, thank you so much. And for everyone else, hopefully we see you either next week in the next session or a future 9X Live. And we'll see you next time. Thanks,
Later,
everyone.
skaters. Bye.
Bye.